Hi, I'm Paulette Crick, the NativtiyMiguel E-Rate Coordinator. It's my responsibility to assist you with various aspects of the E-Rate process. I decided to create this series of presentations in order to provide you with the information you will need to understand and to be successful in all aspects of the E-Rate funding process. Logistically, it's been difficult to bring key people together for face-to-face meetings. First of all, I live in the Midwest, and the NativtiyMiguel schools are located coast to coast. Although I love to travel and would enjoy meeting each of you personally, it's just not practical. Secondly, there are several aspects of the E-Rate process that are very important for you to understand, and an email will simply not get the job done. I really must stress that it's important for each of you to participate in the process. So let's get started.
The first topic to cover is to simply answer the question, what is E-Rate? E-Rate is a discount on telecommunications and internet access for schools and libraries. It is distributed based on need as determined by the level of economic disadvantagement of the school or the school district. E-Rate is not really a grant. The money is dispersed in the form of a discount or reimbursement for a specific funding request, and like all government programs, is filled with rules and hair-splitting distinctions regarding sources and uses of services. The applications for funding are submitted annually and are extremely time-sensitive. The E-Rate program comes out of the FCC, or Federal Communications Commission, and therefore is specifically designed for schools and libraries to have affordable access to services related to communications. To begin with, there is quite a bit of proprietary vocabulary associated with E-Rate. First, there is the SLD, the Schools and Libraries Division of USAC. USAC is the Universal Services Administrative Company, who is contracted by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to oversee and manage the disbursement of E-Rate funds. The term SLD will likely be most commonly used to refer to the institution that governs E-Rate funding. Another significant term is PIA, Program Integrity Assurance. Every step along the path of E-Rate funding has oversight and review. The SLD is divided into numerous review teams, each focusing on specific pieces of the funding request. You will likely hear more about this as your funding application moves through the process. Based on my previous experience, there are questions I've come to expect in PIA. I attempt to collect information such as copies of telephone bills and free and reduced information in advance. The SLD will reject applications if PIA responses are not returned in a timely manner, which is generally 7 to 14 days. The surest way not to receive a funding approval is to ignore a request for information from the SLD. Finally, no matter how prepared we are, there will always be questions presented to us that need additional research or documentation. The response deadline is always short, and the timing never seems to be convenient. Please be patient with the process, because ultimately it leads to a positive result. The timeline for the E-Rate application process can be a bit confusing. The funding year itself always runs from July 1st through June 30th every year. However, the application filing window typically opens sometime in late October or early November, which is 8 to 9 months prior to the start of the funding year. We begin preparing for next year's application almost as soon as the current funding year begins. It can be close to 2 years before the first reimbursement check arrives if you consider your planning and preparation time. Starting in the fall, we gather relevant information in preparation for the application. We ask for copies of telecom bills and other eligible recurring expenses. If possible, we use the October free and reduced data as a baseline for determining the discount. And we discuss the site-specific technology plan in order to prepare RFPs or information to distribute to vendors. The 470 bid window is opened for 28 days, and the most cost-effective vendors are selected for contracts that are signed after the allowable contract date or the 29th day. The 471 is then filed prior to the close of the funding window. The 471 form details specific funding request and commonly is known as the actual funding application. PIA review, or Program Integrity Assurance, begins at the discretion of the SLD. It may come as early as March or as late as May of the following year. Funding approvals follow PIA review, and the application process begins again for the coming year. It can be a bit confusing and stressful because simultaneously we are asking you for last year's expenses to wrap up the final year, we're in the middle of the current year, and we're planning for the coming year. It's all very strange how it works out, but I describe it as a spiral linear timeline. There are actually 3 timelines, all moving at variable speeds and at different points in funding maturity. We do not deliberately harass you for information. We're just moving in a different time dimension at the government's discretion. And the government has no awareness of school time or school schedules. The first level of funding is known as Priority 1 funding. All schools, both public and private, are eligible to receive this funding at a percentage determined by the level of economic disadvantagement within the enrollment. It provides a discount on such things as local, long-distance, and cellular services, as well as high-speed internet access such as DSL, T1, fiber links to internet providers, and other forms of internet access. In some instances, it can include equipment and maintenance, also known as internal connections. Priority 2 funding is typically only distributed to schools with over 75% of the students eligible for free or reduced lunch. The emphasis is on eligibility, not participation in the National School Lunch Program. Priority 2 funding is broken down into 2 elements. The first is internal connections and is best described as the network or the backbone, and is essentially all of the equipment just below the desktop. It includes such things as the firewall, router, switches, server, cabling, and wireless access points. It does not include desktop or laptop computers, smartboards, or printers. It can also include the phone system and video conferencing equipment, but does not include telephone handsets or cameras. The eligible service list for last year was 52 pages long and gives detailed information about each type of eligible equipment and service. My E-rate team spends many hours poring over the eligible services list and studying any notable changes from year to year. Suffice it to say, they leave no stone unturned when it comes to outlining the specific uses of equipment to be funded. The second element of Priority 2 funding is basic maintenance of internal connections, and it is exactly what it sounds like: the maintenance and general upkeep of the eligible equipment. As I mentioned earlier, all schools are eligible for some form of E-rate funding. A discount matrix is used to determine the percentage of the discount the school is eligible to receive. It is not a straight one-to-one exchange. For example, if 40% of the enrollment is eligible for free or reduced lunch, then an urban school would receive a 60% discount, and a rural school would receive a 70% discount. The key is eligibility. If a school does not participate in the National School Lunch Program, then we use an alternative mechanism to qualify the discount to be applied. Technology planning is an essential component to E-rate. It makes sense that you cannot request funding without having a vision for how it is to be used. E-rate requires that 5 areas be addressed in the plan. Those are: you will improve student learning through the use of this new technology. You will prepare teachers properly to use the technology. You will support the administration, data management, and communication processes within the school. You will allow fair and reasonable resource distribution and use within the school. And you will have technical support that is helpful. If you are a consortium member, then you need to have a plan for your individual school that is specific to the needs of your students and faculty. The consortium plan speaks in broad general strokes, and the local plan adds the detail. The acceptable use agreements and Internet access policies should be included in the tech plan to ensure safety in Internet access. Students, faculty, and parents must all be informed of the policies. Hand in hand with Internet safety in the technology plan is SEPA compliance. SEPA, or the Children's Internet Protection Act, requires that schools actively filter and monitor Internet activity within the school. Commonly, in smaller school settings, administrators will say, "We monitor Internet access by ensuring the students are supervised while in the lab." While I agree that all students need some amount of supervision, that level of supervision does not qualify as SEPA compliance. In some cases, the Internet service provider filters the access for the school and thereby qualifies the school as SEPA compliant. However, if the provider does not filter the Internet for the school, then the school must have an application to monitor and filter access. This application is not paid for with E-rate funding. The school must also document the process used to identify and resolve all SEPA issues. This can be done by maintaining good documentation from meetings and agendas and attendance at these meetings. I would like to thank you for your time, and I would encourage you to work hard on your technology plan and enjoy the many benefits of E-rate funding.